All throughout history, society has had some truly bizarre rules. Humanity has been plagued by taboos that make zero sense when you really think about them. I'm talking about everything from cultures that ban certain colors at weddings to countries where wearing the wrong hat could ruin your reputation. These are not your average faux pas. These are full-blown cultural no-nos that would get you shamed, fined, or worse. Some of these peculiar beliefs shaped entire societies, while others are just plain weird. Either way, they're real, they're documented, and we get to laugh about them today. I'm Mike with List 25, and today we're counting down 25 baffling taboos that once plagued society. Some of these are going to blow your mind. But before we begin, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new content. It truly helps the channel. With that being said, let's go taboo. 25. Green hats in China. Did your partner get down and dirty with your bestie behind your back? Want to let everyone know and ruin your own reputation in a truly wild way? Just go to China and wear a green hat. It's not a fashion crime. It's a full-blown public announcement that your partner is a cheating cheater who cheats. Why are you the one getting shamed, you may ask? Well, that's just the way it works. I don't make the rules. The phrase wearing a green hat is a Chinese idiom that means a man has been betrayed, and it carries some serious weight. This belief goes back centuries to the Yuan dynasty, when men whose female relatives worked as prostitutes were forced to wear green hats as a form of public shame. Over time, the green hat became permanently linked to infidelity and disgrace. Fast forward to today, and many Chinese men still refuse to wear a green head covering because of the stigma. Businesses even avoid using the color in their uniform hats. Designers steer clear too, and you'll rarely see one gifted. I mean, can you imagine giving your wife a green hat, winking, and then walking away? Even jokes and memes about green hats can stir up some wild vitriol online. Just don't do it unless you want to be relentlessly teased. 24. Men's shorts were offensive. Can you imagine getting kicked out of a restaurant for showing a little knee? Yeah, that was the reality for American men in the early 1900s. Wearing shorts in public wasn't just frowned upon, it was considered outright offensive. And yes, people would scorn you. Society viewed shorts as undignified and juvenile. It was something for little boys or manual laborers. Real men would never do such a thing. Real men wore long trousers, no exception. Exposing your leg was immodest, disrespectful, and immoral. You'd be shooed out of restaurants, denied service at shops, and be told flat out to leave the family dinner by your prudish grandma. What's worse, you'd be looked down upon and sometimes even mocked by all of society. The mere thought that a man would voluntarily wear such a scant piece of clothing? Absolutely scandalous. Sounds suspiciously familiar, doesn't it, ladies? 23. The Scots' aversion to pork. Bacon lovers, this next one is just for you, unless you're Scottish. Over in the land of Playa, they're famous for their whiskey, deep frying everything they possibly can, and haggis. Pork? Not so much. At least, not in the past. Pork was mysteriously absent from Scottish tables for centuries. This aversion to pig meat was so strong that it actually became part of their cultural identity. It wasn't a law, but it may as well have been. Why? You can blame a mix of superstition, religion, and some terrifying health scares for the lack of pork chops on your plate. Medieval Scots believed pigs weren't just unclean, but also unlucky, and that if you ate them, you could get nasty skin diseases like leprosy. Paranoid? Surprisingly, not entirely. While you can't get leprosy from pork, you can get a whole host of scary illnesses if you undercook the meat. This fear of pork lasted well into the 19th century until Scots finally got over it. Until then, bacon was basically the devil's breakfast. 22. Umbrella shaming. In China, you'd get shamed for a green hat, but that's not as strange as what went on in the 1750s in England. It's always England, I swear. Nearly every wild, unhinged fact I've ever learned always comes out of England. I can say that I have English heritage. Anyway, let me tell you a little story of Jonas Hanway and how he was publicly mocked for doing something super normal. That man had the absolute audacity to carry an umbrella in the streets of London. Hamway was a philanthropist and travel writer who used umbrellas in France and Persia, where people actually appreciated staying dry. But when he brought one to London, people absolutely lost their minds. Umbrellas were considered feminine, foreign, and quite frankly embarrassing. Real men wore broad hats or heavy cloaks like proper gentlemen. The wetter the better, they would always say. Okay, so I don't know if they actually said that, but I imagine they said that, so you know it's real in my head. To Londoners, only delicate ladies or vain Frenchmen do something as ridiculous as protect themselves from the downpour. Not men, and definitely not Jonas Hanway. Except, he wasn't about to give up the goods. Hanway kept on using his umbrella because he wasn't about to be emasculated for trying to stay out of the rain, and eventually, English society caught on. 21. Marines and apricots. Forget about black cats and broken mirrors. If you're a US Marine, the real harbinger of doom is a tiny orange fruit. Apricots aren't just considered bad luck, they're considered cursed. No, really, I mean it. Marines will refuse to eat them, carry them, or even say the word while on duty. This all goes back to World War II when M4 Sherman tank crews noticed an oddly disturbing pattern. Way too many mechanical failures and deadly accidents were happening right after someone ate an apricot or brought canned ones on board. Was it a coincidence? Probably. They were in an active war zone. Did the Marines care? Absolutely not. This fruity superstition stuck so hard that modern Marines still won't touch them. Is it ridiculous? Yes, but we have to hand it to our men and women in uniform. If they want to avoid apricots to feel safe while keeping us safe, that's cool with me. Small price to pay for all the hard work they do. 20. When Christmas was taboo. Remember what I said about Victorian England being unhinged? Well, Puritan America makes Victorian England look sane. They were so pure and so religious that they decided to ban Christmas. Yes, in New England, Christmas was banned starting in the 1600s. Oh, and not just ban it for those who follow their Puritan religion, but for everyone in the state. If you were caught celebrating, it was treated like you were partying it up for Satan's birthday. And when I say banned, I mean no trees, no decorations, no feasting, and no Yuletide joy. Nada. Nothing. The Puritans took one look at Christmas and said, hard no to this pagan nonsense. They leaned into the holy text for this stance. Since the Bible never said Jesus was born on December 25th, then that was that. Why celebrate it if it's not his actual birthday? They saw Christmas as just another excuse for drunken parties disguised as worship, and they were not having it. It wasn't until around 1840 that Christmas became popular and started to sweep the nation. By 1870, it was a national holiday, and there was nothing the Puritans could do to stop it. Did their little Grinch hearts grow 2 sizes, and did they get into the spirit of the holidays? Probably not. But at least they weren't trying to stop neighbors from having fun anymore. 19. Soul-stealing pictures. The Amish community lives a simple life without a lot of modern conveniences or a whole lot of interaction with mainstream society, and that includes the fine art of taking selfies. You won't find a whole lot of those in an Amish house. The Amish community discourages or outright forbids picture taking because many believe it violates their religious principles. Some sects even believe it can steal the soul. For some, this is deeply rooted in their Anabaptist theology of humility, separation from the outside world, and the rejection of vanity. This doesn't stop at cell phone selfies. Some communities also don't allow any show of pride, self-promotion, or anything that draws attention to the individual. So no, they won't pose for pictures, allow themselves to be videotaped, or even sit for portraits. Does it seem weird to us outsiders? In today's day and age of Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, being off-grid does seem odd, but doesn't it also kind of sound nice? At least for a little while. 18. Drinking coffee. Have you ever woken up, grabbed your cup of joe, and thought, good morning, Satan drink? No? Well, that's exactly what 17th century Europe thought you were doing if they saw you with a coffee in your hand. A mass outrage began when coffee first arrived in Europe from the Islamic world. To Europe, it was exotic and fascinating, but also suspicious. Highly suspicious. And because it had ties to the Muslim culture, some Christian clergy denounced it loudly and proudly and called it the devil's invention. They feared it would corrupt Christians and steer them away from the holy drink of wine. This bigotry ran so deep, Some communities even outright banned coffee altogether. Catholics called on the Pope to outlaw the drink, but much to their surprise, he was a fan. And in England, King Charles II tried to suppress coffee houses in 1675, but his order didn't work, and he was forced to rescind it, and the Java kept flowing. The love of coffee was stronger than the fear of eternal damnation. Now that's something I can get behind. I get it. Totally get it. Can you imagine a life without your morning brew? Running errands without a nice coffee? Neither can I. Oh, and fun fact, coffee originated in Ethiopia and was first cultivated by an Ethiopian shepherd. So, yeah. 17. Whistling near cemeteries. Speaking of the devil, if you ever want to summon him, just head to your local cemetery and start whistling. At least, that's what Western folklore would have you believe. For centuries, this superstition had a chokehold on people all across Europe and North America. People truly believed whistling near a graveyard would bring forth ghosts, spirits, and even the devil himself. This stems from the idea that cemeteries are liminal spaces where the boundaries between the living and the dead are so thin that the dead can cross over. Any sounds, but especially whistling, were thought to carry the power to reach across that boundary and lure spirits over the line. It's like sending out a signal to the spirit world that you're down to hang out with some lost souls. Is that the kind of attention that you want? Not the attention that I want. No, sir. No, thank you. Oh, and more than that, it's believed any woken spirit would not be happy about it. To be fair, I probably wouldn't like being woken up by someone whistling at me either. I get it. And for all those reasons, we should just all straight up avoid whistling near cemeteries like the plague. 16. Whistling at night. As weird as that one was, whistling got an even worse rap when people decided whistling at night at all was simply too dangerous. In 18th century Europe, you could sing to yourself on your nightly walk home, but don't let that song include a whistle. Some towns actually went so far as to ban whistling at night altogether. No joke. People really thought it would summon all things evil. From witches to ghosts to demons, it would bring demonic entities from the spirit world into the physical one. It was not a risk anyone wanted to take. And for the brave souls who were willing to risk it, if the authorities caught them, they'd face fines, arrests, or public shaming. This superstition was so widespread that it was actually codified in small towns where folklore ruled supreme. The powers that be would go so far as to warn travelers and sailors to keep their lips unpuckered or else. So yeah, people used to get arrested for whistling after the sun went down. Wild. Truly wild. 15. Women being considered spiritually unclean. As far as religious rules go, this one may have the ladies watching this tradition side-eyeing. In ancient Babylon, Israel, and India, temples outright banned menstruating women from entering. No, not because of hygiene or comfort, but because people genuinely believed a woman on her monthly could anger the gods just by walking through the door. And for some, this belief never went away. Periods were viewed as ritual impurity, as blood was tied to both life and death. Women during menstruation were thought to carry temporarily bad juju that could contaminate sacred spaces. This is actually even spelled out in Leviticus. Women were considered unclean for 7 days, and anyone who touched them would become impure. Some religious sects still follow this in 2025. In Orthodox Judaism, women must follow strict Nida laws and take a ritual mikvah before resuming normal life. For those who follow the Quran, women aren't allowed in certain mosques depending on their scholarly beliefs, but they are also exempt from fasts until they are pure again. But they do have to make up for it later. This is a ritual that has affected women for centuries and still does today. 14. Tommy knockers. Want to know the weirdest workplace safety protocol ever? Try leaving cake for imaginary gnomes so they don't murder you. Cornish miners believe that tiny 2-foot-tall spirits called Tommyknockers lived in mines. They also believe these little guys wore miniature miner outfits and knocked on tunnel walls. Oh, and they also believe Tommyknockers could either save your life or end it, depending on their mood. Those knocking sounds? It was the Tommyknockers warning them of cave-ins, or pointing the men towards the rich ore veins, or, it was just them just messing around. Miners took this seriously enough that they leave food offerings at the end of every single shift. Skip out on the tradition? Expect bad luck, accidents, or even death. Cornish immigrants even brought this superstition to America, and it spread like wildfire through Western mines. This belief became so strong in the USA that when a California mine closed in 1956, miners petitioned the owners to leave the entrance open so that Tommyknockers could escape and find new homes. And the owners actually agreed. 13. Collecting fern seeds. If you're ever attacked by a mining gnome, don't worry. English folklore has a solution for you. All you need to do is collect some fern seeds under a full moon while performing a secret ritual, and boom, you can turn invisible and run away from them. And while you're at it, you can also unlock the power to speak to animals. Who knew fern seeds were so much fun? There is just one little catch. You have to avoid mischievous fairies and bad omens while collecting these ridiculously tiny seeds at night. And by ridiculously small, I mean they are impossible to see, especially in the dark. But if you succeed, legend has it, you'll be unstoppable. The problem? Ferns don't produce seeds. Like, at all. They produce spores on the underside of their leaves. This entire myth was built on a botanical misunderstanding, and countless people have hunted for something that never existed at all. 12. Human dissection. Doctors in ancient Greece truly had their work cut out for them. Why? Because they weren't allowed to cut open and look inside a human body. Ever. Not a living body, and definitely not a dead body. Most especially not a dead one. The Greeks believed corpses were sacred, so slicing one open was a massive violation of divine law. How would one go about studying human anatomy when you're not allowed to see what that anatomy looks like or research how it works? Take a guess. No, I mean they would take a guess. Back then, doctors relied on their keen guessing skills, theories, or external observations. They became masters at speculation and used philosophy and logic to fill in the blanks. Creative? Sure. Accurate? Not so much. What makes this really interesting is that they would study animal cadavers. They saw no issue in poking around inside a pig's body. They also had no problem assuming that human bodies worked exactly the same way. Spoiler alert, they don't. This led to some seriously unhinged and inaccurate medical presumptions that stuck around for far too long. Some for centuries. Turns out, you need to know how the human body works to be able to work on one properly. Who knew? 11. Sneezing was dangerous. I talked about how people believed whistling would summon spirits and how the Amish believe getting their pictures taken can steal their souls. But have you heard about the horrors that come with sneezing? No, I'm not talking about those times in the dead cold of winter where sneezing feels like 1,000 shards of ice coming out of your face. I'm talking about how people in medieval Europe thought that sneezing was basically playing Russian roulette with your soul. During medieval times, folks genuinely believed that a sneeze could force your soul out of your body, leaving you wide open for demons to waltz on in. Oh, and things got worse during the plague outbreaks. A sneeze would send people into a panic. Was it just allergies? Were you about to be possessed? Are you gonna drop dead? The possibilities were grim. Fun fact, this is where God bless you comes in. Pope Gregory I reportedly started this tradition during the 6th century plague. The idea was that saying it immediately after someone sneezed would protect their soul and ward off evil. That way, if you did get sick, at least everyone knew your spirit was intact. 10. Sinful sweets. Imagine living in a time where eating chocolate was a one-way ticket to hell. Well, that's what life was like in 17th and 18th century Europe. It was a legitimate fear for many religious folks. The Catholic Church initially declared that drinking chocolate would break a religious fast, which was a huge no. Spanish bishops took this a step further and banned chocolate from churches altogether because aristocratic ladies kept sipping it during sermons instead of paying attention. Puritans were even harsher. They didn't just see chocolate as a sinful treat. They decided all sugary sweets were dangerous indulgences that led to gluttony. They couldn't be feasting on something that would lead them down the path of committing one of the 7 deadly sins. Blasphemy. Puritans like preacher Richard Baxter gave whole sermons denouncing the demon sugar. Things took a turn in the 18th century when doctors started promoting chocolate's health benefits. This made chocolate too profitable to ban, and even popes began sneaking a cup. As chocolate became even more mainstream, religious leaders gave up the fight. Now it's a candy we all love, instead of a path to eternal damnation. 9. Chinese color taboos. Have you ever stressed about what to wear to a wedding? Picking the wrong color can turn into a major event. In America, women know to ask a bride before donning something a little too close to white. That's basically the same over in China, but for very different reasons. They don't choose the shade because it symbolizes death and mourning, not exactly the tone you want while watching two people madly in love tie the knot. It's the equivalent of wishing their marriage to be cursed. You'll want to avoid black for many of the same reasons. And you'll want to check in with the bride before choosing red since it's their traditional bridal color and many still choose it. And that's not the only clothing taboo they have. Red is strictly forbidden to be donned at funerals because it represents happiness, luck, and prosperity. Wearing red to mourn is seen as celebrating their death. As you can imagine, that would be deeply offensive to the grieving family. These aren't just silly little fashion rules. They are sacred cultural traditions that honor the most important memories in life. 8. Charging interest. Number 8 will make you wish you were born back in medieval Europe. And yes, I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out. Back in the day, charging interest on loans was considered a fast-track way to become Satan's best friend, or at least one of his prisoners in hell. Christian teaching saw charging more money than you gave as exploiting the needy and hoarding wealth unfairly. Back then, it was a huge no-no. In today's world, though, banks love making that extra buck. Religious authorities condemned the practice, and laws often limited or outright prohibited it. Lending money for profit was thought to violate divine laws and social ethics. Helping your neighbor was supposed to be fair and charitable, not a means to line your pockets. Of course, people being people, they found loopholes and workarounds, and these clever tricks are what led to the banking system we have today. The financial system we know today was built on people trying to skirt the system. You don't say. 7. Cremation. In today's world, cremation is a rather normal choice all around the globe when a loved one passes. But burning a body after death hasn't always been a normal practice. In fact, it was seen as wildly disrespectful in many cultures. Societies used to believe burial was the only truly proper way to honor the dead, maintain ancestral ties, and ensure spiritual harmony. Cremation wasn't just frowned upon, it was considered dangerous to the soul. People believed that burning the body would disrupt the deceased's journey into the afterlife. Burial was pushed as the cultural norm and reinforced as the only acceptable option. Fire was seen as destructive and unnatural, and communities would judge anyone who made such a sacrilegious choice. While cremation still remains a taboo in some cultures, others have embraced the change. The Catholic Church lifted its cremation ban in 1963, and other Christian faiths followed suit. Nowadays, people even take their loved ones' ashes and turn them into artwork, jewelry, and keepsakes. 6. Touching the dead. Cremation isn't the only death-related taboo on this list. In many cultures, simply touching the dead is strictly forbidden. Not only is it disrespectful, but there's a fear that it could lead to spiritual danger. It was believed physical contact with the corpse would contaminate the living and invite misfortune. Not only that, but it disrupts the soul's journey into the afterlife. Rituals and taboos dictated who could handle the body and how the dead were to be handled. Historically, this task was left to priests, family members, and undertakers who would follow strict guidelines to ensure the dead remained at peace and weren't disturbed. These weren't just suggestions people could ignore. Breaking the rules could get you ostracized from your community, cursed by the spirits, or much worse. Even today, some cultures maintain specific purification rituals after coming into contact with the deceased. Respect for the dead still runs deep, and the fear of the dead and what could happen if you disrespect the fallen still runs even deeper. 5. Being gay is criminalized. Love is love, right? Well, not according to a huge chunk of the world throughout history, and even today. For centuries, same-sex relationships have been treated as criminal acts in countless societies. And I'm not just talking about social disapproval here. I'm talking about actual laws with actual consequences. Prison, torture, execution, all for the crime of falling in love. Religious institutions and governments have worked hand in hand to make being gay not just taboo, but completely illegal. People have spent decades hiding who they are because they weren't able to be openly gay without risking everything. They could lose their careers, their families, their safety, and even their lives. The fear is real, and the consequences have always been devastating. Thankfully, many countries have made huge progress in recent decades. From decriminalizing homosexuality to pushing for equal rights to codifying gay marriage, things are looking up in many parts of the world. Unfortunately, not everyone is getting with the times. Over 60 countries still have serious, vicious laws against same-sex couples, and the battle for true equality is still being fought. 4. Using the left hand. Ever get yelled at for having your elbows on the table? Well, in parts of Asia and the Middle East, table manners go way beyond that. Using your left hand for eating, greeting someone, or handing over objects was considered absolutely taboo and completely disrespectful. And I don't mean it was a minor faux pas that would get you a stern look from your grandma. I mean, such an act could offend every single person around you. Traditionally, the left hand was associated with unclean tasks like personal hygiene. Before toilet paper and running water, people used their left hand for bathroom duties. Because of this, left hands were seen as dirty, and it was incredibly rude to use them in social settings. Nobody wanted the hand you use in the toilet anywhere near them. Even today, many people in these regions still follow this rule of etiquette, and visitors are expected to as well. So before you jet set to Asia or the Middle East, just double check the local customs and make sure your friendly greeting doesn't turn into a mini scandal. 3. Eating shellfish. Lobster, crab, shrimp, and oysters are seen as delicacies that will cost you a small fortune at an upscale restaurant. For many cultures throughout history, though, they were seen as absolutely disgusting, lowly, and downright sinful. Yeah, sinful. Let me explain. Some sects of Jewish and Islamic faiths took one look at shellfish and decided that was a big fat nope. They pegged them as unclean creatures and touted that eating them would make you unclean too. Shellfish were looked as bottom feeders that crawled around in the muck, which made them morally suspicious. The leaders decided they were gluttonous and corrupt, and so religious authorities weren't about to let people indulge in something so sinful. Eating them wasn't just breaking the rules, it was spiritual failure. The irony? Shellfish were actually abundant and super cheap back in the day, so banning them kept the poor from having easy access to an affordable protein source. Practical, right? And no, before you ask, I don't keep kosher, so I can eat shellfish and milk and meat and pork. Not all Jews keep kosher. 2. Questioning religious authority. Think cancel culture is bad now? Try living in a time when questioning the church could get you burned at the stake. And I mean this literally. For centuries, challenging religious authority was a death sentence. Religion was intertwined with law, politics, and social order. This meant dissent was more than just heretical. It was treated as a direct threat to society itself. If you openly bashed the doctrine, questioned a clergyman, or dared to interpret sacred text your own way, you were putting yourself on the line. Executioners were on hand and at the ready to carry out brutal public slayings to send a crystal clear message to anyone else who dared to step out of line. Religious institutions used fear and violence to maintain conformity and crush any opposition. Free thought was dangerous and would lead to anything from public humiliation to death. It was straight up suicidal. 1. Naming bears. I've covered some pretty wild taboos on this list, but this final one might be the weirdest of them all. Did you know that in early cultures, people refused to say the word bear out loud? No, it wasn't because they couldn't pronounce it. It's because they genuinely thought that speaking a bear's true name could summon the animal or make it angry. So, instead of calling it a bear, they used nicknames and euphemisms. This wasn't just a superstition for the sake of it. To them, this was survival. Hunter-gatherer societies depended on careful interactions with the animal world, and bears are dangerous predators. By using code names like the Brown One or Honey Eater, they hoped to avoid attracting a bear's attention and being stalked or attacked. Did it work? Probably not. Bears are gonna bear no matter what you call them. But seeing as how they are one of nature's most dangerous animals, I'd probably do whatever I could to feel safe in the deep woods too. And there you have it, folks. 25 taboos so bizarre they truly make you wonder what people were thinking. Refusing to say a bear's name out loud was weird, but executing someone for daring to question the church is absolutely unhinged. Humanity really has held some absolutely wild ideas about what's acceptable, and some of these were taken seriously for decades. If you enjoyed this dive into history's oddest social rules, check out our other video, all the taboo historical photos you weren't meant to see. If you're looking for something a little different though, 25 legal loopholes nobody talks about. It is hilarious and a bit concerning. I'll put both in the description below. And that's it for today. If you had fun, make sure to hit all those buttons. I don't know if fun's the word today. Like, comment, share, and hit that bell so you never miss another video. I'll catch you in the next one.